The other day I was reading Mark Fisher's Capitalist Realism. Um, Probably judging by the name of the book, you'd think it's an economic book, but it's mostly political. But just as political as it is also cultural. A sort of diagnosis of what life is like today. And the book was written in 2009, so almost 16 years ago. And there was a section that stood out to me. There was a part where he was describing his experience as an educator in the UK, and he described how students. I'm not sure if it was students in general, but at least one student, he would play music off his headphones, and even if he wasn't necessarily listening to the music, he still had music playing quietly off the headphones, but maybe the headphones were dangling off his ears. Or maybe he would just have the music playing even if the sound wasn't necessarily on. Just constantly with the music playing. And he described it as the student sort of only able to function and only have comfort unless he's wired into what he calls a sort of matrix, a technological matrix. And it really made me sort of reflect on my own life, how, and I'm sure others can relate, maybe people around my age, how there's this constant need for stimulus. You're playing video games and you're listening to a YouTube video in the background, for example, or you finish using the restroom, and even as you're wiping and washing your hands, you still have a TikTok or an Instagram reel playing on loop, and or it doesn't matter what you're doing, you have some sort of Spotify playing. And what really shocked me was that this book was written in 2009. Now, back in 2009, I wasn't conscious enough to pay attention to these things, but I realized this has been going on for nearly 20 years now. And maybe back in 2009 it was a lot easier to say, oh, this is just this sort of neurotic, this sort of compulsion to constantly be wired up, so to say, is only affecting a minority of students, or of people. I'll just say people in general. It's only affecting a minority of people who are chronically online or have some sort of neurodivergence or are antisocial. It's a minority of people, and it's their fault. But 16 years later, I think more and more people are showing this sort of constant need for stimulus, this constant need to be plugged into the machine, as it says. And what really makes me think is that what really makes me feel a sort of sadness is that the people in charge of our society, the people who are supposed to take care of the youth, who are supposed to, care and look out for our flourishing, the common narratives you hear, in a sense, they've failed us. Because we should have recognized that this is a problem and it's only going to get worse. But instead of prescribing some systematic or some real solutions, the solutions have always been boiled down on the individual level. It's always your fault that you're so hooked on the screen. It's always your fault. It should be you that, why don't you lock in, for example? I know that's a bit of a joke, but memes sort of become truths, especially in our social media driven age society. Sometimes I wonder, maybe if back in 2009, when the seed of this problem that I think affects so many of us would have been taken seriously and not just dismissed as the failing of one person, had those problems been taken more seriously, we would probably have better tools and a better mindset to deal with how things are today. Because I don't think it's appropriate enough or appropriate anymore to just say, oh, it's just one, or it's just a minority, it's just a group of maladjusted students or younger people. I think it's the majority, a growing number. And if this constant need for stimulus is just getting worse, how is it going to be 10 years from now? What's the end game? Because frankly, I think we can all agree that it's in the best interest of people with power and people with money to keep this trend going. After all, the more attention that's given, the more ad revenue, the more products sell. And it might sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I do it out of desperation. Individual solutions aren't going to help everyone or a majority of people, but it might be the only option when the system that's in charge clearly doesn't have our best interest. I wonder what things are going to look like in 10, 15 years. I really do. I'm curious. I think we should take the plight of others more seriously. It's funny some people, they look at kids with iPads, for example, or people who can't focus in class or truancy, and they sort of look down on these people. But clearly looking down on people and brushing it off is just people being stupid. Obviously that hasn't helped. So at what point do we take it seriously? At what point do we say it's not enough to just brush it off as maladjusted people?